early here in Munich, in Bavaria, Germany, where I live. I'm going to talk about something I don't usually talk about, which is my kids, how I and my wife are raising our two kids, 12 years old, 14 years old. They are Gen Z. They are still in school. They go to German schools, obviously, and the big question of how to raise them with respect to these things, smartphones, and really any digital device. Two things have actually become hot topics. One is that the schools here in this part of Germany have introduced a reform bill that is called Digitale Schule der Zukunft, and that refers to Germans' idea that they are behind in digital things, and so they need to kind of catch up and therefore join the future by being more digital. I do think it is maybe 10 years too late. That's kind of how Germany does things. Now the question is how we can have more analog experiences, because we are kind of swimming in digital experiences. But I'm not going to talk too much about that, not at all. What I am going to talk about is this book, The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt, which I have already been talking about on this channel, and I'm a lot further in. And what this makes me think, and I told my wife this, is that I am never, ever, ever going to buy my kids a smartphone. Hey everybody, welcome to the Sanctus Forum. I am Michael Stewart Robb, better known as Mike. Here on the Sanctus Forum, we talk about books and everyday spirituality, among other things. And that's why we have been talking about The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt, which actually kills two birds with one stone. It's both everyday spirituality and it is a book. And if you like that sort of thing, you can subscribe with your finger. You can also like these videos with your finger. I used to say that quite a bit more often, but I have lost the habit. This is going to be a little bit more closer to a review of Jonathan Haidt's book, which the past videos weren't. I more or less took an idea that he gave me and just ran with it in the direction that I wanted to go. But I have now read the core part of the book, the part where he makes his case that smartphones are having very negative effects upon our children, and he's painting a very, very dark picture, and that's intentional, and he wants to sort of say that this is not just a correlation. It's not just that we have rising problems among young people and we have extensive phone use, but he wants to say these two actually go together. And I think one of the things, this isn't one of my main points, but what he really wants to do is he wants to do a traditional social experiment in which he takes 20 schools and the families that go with those schools and just eliminate the phones for them, and then take 20 other schools and the families associated with those schools and just leave everything as it is and let that run for a year or two and then just compare the results. That's really what he wants to do, but as you can imagine, that's a huge undertaking, and I don't know, maybe that's possible now that he has written the book and he's increased interest in this topic, but that's really what would help make his case. Now, obviously, all over the world, schools in various countries, more forward-thinking schools, are reducing the presence of screens in schools, and I know that a lot of families are doing the same. But now that I've read the core chapters, I realize, and I think you should know this as a reader, that it's not really about smartphones. With respect to girls, he has a lot to say about social media, which is mediated to these girls through their smartphone primarily, and that's really what's causing the social issues and emotional issues in these girls. Actually, if you think about it, you almost don't even need a study to do that. If you look at what's involved in social media, it's pretty obvious what that would do to somebody who consumed a lot of it. If you could take all the social media off of their phones and just leave them the device, they wouldn't suffer nearly as badly as they currently are doing. With boys, he shifts the conversation pretty quickly and says that boys have, for a much longer time, become more isolated, more stay-at-home sorts of creatures because of the attraction of the digital world, and that's largely through computers and television and gaming consoles as well. So these digital offerings have become so much more robust and addictive because they're so much more immersive. And so he's dealing with cases of pornography and video gaming, which by and large aren't really smartphone things, though obviously that's a portal for these boys, and maybe an entryway into the more immersive sort of computer, laptop, TV based things. But basically the idea for boys is that they're removing themselves from the real world, and they don't get the experiences that they need in order to grow up from real world things. But secondly, smartphones are still overwhelming, and this is something that he has lots of data about all through it. And these overwhelming smartphones for these kids are experience blockers, which is what we talked about in a previous video. They really keep kids from having certain kinds of experiences that they really do need in order to grow up as healthy adults or young adults, as the case may be. So it's still very, very overwhelming, and they're overwhelming for their social life because social life is very, very different online and is much more limited, and they're overwhelming for them individually. So there's plenty of evidence about how distracting these sorts of things, and almost any of the classic individual activities or introverted activities that you can think of are not enhanced by the multitasking that comes with having one of these devices nearby. It really doesn't change when you're an adult. It still is a very taxing kind of thing to have near you when you're trying to do something on your own. And you know what? I think that this is where, if he had done a more phenomenological study where he studied these tools with respect to his own experience with them, what you would do is, like, if you studied your own experience with a Swiss Army knife, and what is it like to carry a Swiss Army knife with you all the time for a month, and what is it like to then not have that Swiss Army knife with you? What is it like for you to use the knife portion of the Swiss Army knife, or the scissors, or the file, or whatever, and you kind of go into your own experience with that tool and you describe what it is to you, and then compare those experiences with the qualitative analysis of other people's experiences. That actually could yield quite a bit of material that would be helpful for us in learning about these devices, these tools. Now, for me as a parent, the question that remains is, how can I give my kids good experiences? How can I, 12 and 14, give them good experiences which are going to help them become healthy 18, 19, 20-year-olds when they're less dependent on me, hopefully. One of the things that I and my wife have focused on is finding ways to make things communal, make digital experiences communal. So one of the things that we do is we have a family computer, a computer that the kids can use in a central part of the house where they can actually have access to the games that they're interested in, internet things, YouTube videos, the little tools that they can start to practice in that. But it's things that we inevitably do together, or at least we kind of look over their shoulder, see things. It becomes less of a private activity and much more of a communal activity. And that's one way in which we have tried to sort of help them into some of these digital things, which can be very, very helpful. Secondly, we have tried to require a certain amount of in-person activities because there are so many attractive things that the kids can do at home, and especially if they have a device that they have total access to. We have tried to require that they fill their schedule with a certain number of things in which they are actually interacting with people. They are testing and learning skills like in sports and like in music, which help them learn how to be with other people and develop both emotionally and physically in certain ways. So that's the sort of thing that I think we're not going to stop doing. We're going to continue to try to find good experiences for the kids. And then for us, fourthly, we're going to involve our kids in spiritual community. Now, this is one of the most fascinating parts of this book, and it's chapter 8. It's called Spiritual Elevation and Degradation. Now, Jonathan Haidt is a confessed atheist, and yet he's got a great interest in the sorts of benefits that religious or spiritual communities have for the people that participate in them. And when he says spiritual, he really means morally uplifting things. And I think this chapter 8, is really worth studying for Christian people who are interested in spiritual formation or in church or in helping people through church, because his thesis, it's a very general thesis. It's not strictly Christian in any way, but that spiritual practices, broadly conceived, help people in life. And you can identify some general things that are happening within spiritual practices, such as practices of prayer, such as communal worship or sacred experiences, communal sacred experiences, and so on, things of silence that inevitably take individuals and raise them to be better, more morally capable people. It's morally uplifting. And that's one of the things that I think is so important for young people, is to give them a community of flesh and blood people who know who they are and who have experiences and practices that they are sharing with these young people. Obviously, church is going to be an obvious candidate, but I get his general point that there are really positive things that can happen, even if you are atheists and you mingle with other atheists, to kind of have these kind of community experiences. Because communities are very different than networks, and networks is largely what you're going to get through these kinds of things. These are groups that don't happen at the same time, and they're disassociated. So this person knows this person, but they don't know that person, and you are involved in all these different groups to differing degrees, and it's just a very different kind of experience than, well, what you would experience in a school, in a classroom, where the kids are all in the same space and they go through the same activities at the same time. That's a community. Now, that's really, really important for kids, and for that reason, that's one of the reasons why we more or less require our kids to go to church. And will I ever buy a smartphone for my kids? Maybe. When I see companies trying to make devices that benefit us emotionally and physically, spiritually, then maybe. At the moment, I see them mainly creating something that's of benefit to themselves and to other companies who are probably their partners. But I could see a device being invented which is helpful for teenagers, but it probably wouldn't deserve the name smartphone. It probably would be a much less featured phone. And that's the whole thing with the smartphone, is to just pack more and more and more features in it to make it even more of a multitasking beast. And I think that's the thing that isn't really helping us. So if you have a thought about that and how perhaps I could continue in my goal to benefit my kids and my Gen Z associates, then let me know in the comments. And if you made it this far, and if you have made it this far, you really should be subscribed to the channel. But we'll have another video another day. Bye. Coffee is definitely cold now.